on the evening of February 24th, 1978. The procedural records regarding the case that would come to be known as the Yuba County Five began with a routine departure. 5 men left Yuba City, California, in a 1969 Mercury Montego. According to the statements provided by family members to law enforcement, the group had a singular, low-risk destination. They were traveling 50 miles north to Chico to attend a college basketball game. The context of this inquiry relies heavily on the profiles of the individuals involved, as detailed in social service files and medical histories collected by investigators. The group consisted of Theodore Weiher, Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, Jack Hewitt, and Gary Mathias. Documents from the Gateway Projects, a vocational rehabilitation center, indicated that 4 of the 5 men lived with intellectual disabilities or learning barriers that fostered a high degree of dependency on their families. They were collectively known as the Gateway Gators, a basketball team scheduled to play in a tournament sponsored by the Special Olympics on the following day, February 25th. Theodore Weiher, aged 32, was described in reports as friendly, but lacking in common sense. Jack Madruga, 30, was the owner and operator of the vehicle. His driving record was clean, and family affidavits emphasized that he was exceedingly protective of his car, rarely allowing others to drive it. Bill Sterling, 29, was noted for his religious nature and generally stayed close to home. Jack Hewitt, 24, was the youngest and most dependent of the group. The 5th member, 25-year-old Gary Mathias, presented a more complex medical history. According to Army discharge papers and subsequent psychiatric records, Mathias had been diagnosed with schizophrenia. His stability was contingent upon a strict pharmacological regimen. The toxicology reports and medical files listed his required medications as stelazine and cogentin. Investigators noted that without these substances, his mental state could deteriorate rapidly. At the time of the trip, however, his physician had recorded that Mathias was stable and lucid. The timeline established by witness testimony places the men at California State University, Chico, during the evening of February 24th. They watched the UC Davis versus Chico state basketball game. The game ended shortly before 10 in the evening, with a victory for the Gators' preferred team. Witnesses at the gymnasium confirmed the group appeared in high spirits following the match. At this point in the investigation, the movements of the men were accounted for and aligned with their stated plans. Following the game, the group stopped at Bears Market in downtown Chico. This location provided the last confirmed sighting of the men. A store clerk, whose statement is preserved in the case file, recalled the group entering the establishment. The receipt and the clerk's testimony indicate they purchased several snack items, including one Hostess cherry pie, one Langendorf lemon pie, a Snickers bar, a Marathon bar, and 2 Pepsis. The clerk noted that the transaction occurred just before the store closed at 10 o'clock at night, and that nothing appeared amiss with their behavior. From a procedural standpoint, the subsequent actions of the driver, presumed to be Madruga, represent the primary anomaly in the case. The direct route back to Yuba City required a simple drive south along Highway 99. It is a straight, flat road through the Sacramento Valley. However, traffic data and physical evidence suggest the Mercury, Montego, did not travel south. Instead, the vehicle moved east. The geography of the area is critical to understanding the deviation. To the east of Chico lies the Oroville-Quincy Highway, a road that ascends rapidly into the Plumas National Forest. This route is not a highway in the conventional sense, but a winding mountain road that climbs to high elevations. On the night of February 24th, the weather reports for the Sierra Nevada foothills indicated deteriorating conditions. The snow line was descending, and temperatures were dropping below freezing. A witness statement provided by Joseph Scones offered the only potential sighting of the group during this window. Scones had driven his own vehicle, a Volkswagen Beetle, up the mountain earlier that day to check snow levels near his cabin. His vehicle became stuck in a snowbank. According to the police report filed days later, Scones spent the night in his car. He stated that while waiting for assistance, he experienced physical distress, specifically pain in his chest, which he interpreted as a medical emergency. Scones reported that sometime during the night, he saw a set of headlights appear behind his vehicle. Another car parked approximately 20 feet behind him. He stated that he saw multiple individuals outside the second vehicle and called out for help. According to his statement, the lights of the second vehicle turned off, and the individuals did not respond to his calls. He later reported seeing what looked like flashlights near the car before silence returned to the forest. Scones remained in his vehicle until morning, when he walked 8 miles down the mountain to a lodge to secure assistance. By the early morning hours of February 25th, when the men had not returned, family members began making calls. The timeline of the reporting process shows that the first missing persons reports were filed with the Yuba County Sheriff's Department and the Sutter County Sheriff's Department within 24 hours. Law enforcement agencies in the surrounding counties were notified to be on the lookout for the turquoise and white Mercury Montego. At this stage, the working theory among investigators was that an accident had occurred on the return trip along Highway 99. Patrol units canvassed the ditches and fields along the southern route, assuming a mechanical failure or a collision. It was not until February 28th that the scope of the search shifted. A United States Forest Service ranger located the Mercury Montego on a remote, unpaved service road in the Plumas National Forest. This location was roughly 70 miles off the direct route the men should have taken. The procedural analysis of the vehicle raised immediate questions. The car was found on a rocky, snow-covered road far past the snow line. However, the vehicle was not stuck. Investigators determined that the 5 men could have pushed the vehicle free from the shallow snow drift. Yet, there was no evidence of such an attempt. The tires could have easily gained traction. The gas tank was 1/4 full. The engine started immediately when law enforcement turned the key. There was no mechanical reason for the car to stop at that specific location. Inside the vehicle, officers found the wrappers from the snacks purchased at Bayer's Market, confirming the group's presence. The windows were rolled down, despite the freezing temperatures outside. No keys were found in the ignition or the immediate vicinity. The vehicle was unlocked. Maps of California were present in the glove compartment, but none provided detailed navigation for the unpaved logging roads of the Plumas National Forest. The heavy coats the men would have needed for the mountain weather were absent. A distinct failure in the timeline occurred shortly after the vehicle was processed. A massive snowstorm hit the region, burying the location and suspending ground search operations. The investigation remained dormant until the spring thaw permitted re-entry into the forest. On June 4th, 1978, the timeline of the investigation shifted from a missing persons case to a recovery operation. A group of motorcyclists at a forestry service trailer located 19 miles from where the car had been abandoned made a discovery. Inside the trailer, they observed what appeared to be an individual lying on a bed. Law enforcement personnel arrived at the location the following morning to process the scene. Investigators noted that the individual inside the trailer was Theodore Weiher. The state of the scene presented immediate procedural anomalies. Weiher was found tucked into a bed, wrapped in 8 sheets, with his head resting on a pillow. His leather shoes were missing. The autopsy report indicated that Weiher had survived for a significant duration following the initial disappearance. The findings listed the cause of the loss of life as a combination of inanition, referring to severe malnutrition, and hypothermia. Records show he had lost nearly 100 pounds. The medical examiner estimated that the timeline of his survival extended anywhere from 8 to 13 weeks after the group abandoned their vehicle. A detailed inventory of the trailer deepened the questions for investigators. The structure was stocked with provisions for forest rangers. Officers cataloged dozens of cans of sea rations that had been opened and consumed. An Army-style P-38 can opener was found on the scene, which records indicate only 2 members of the group, Madruga and Mathias, would have likely known how to operate due to their military service background. However, investigators noted a separate storage locker containing dehydrated meals that would have been sufficient to sustain all 5 men for a year. This locker remained unopened. Furthermore, a propane tank connected to the heating system was checked by officials. It was full. The valve merely required a single turn to activate the heat. Yet the record states it was never touched. Matches and paper material suitable for starting a fire were also present and unused. The evidence suggested that while Weiher and potentially others were present in the shelter, they did not utilize the available resources to maintain temperature, despite the freezing conditions outside. On the bedside table next to Weiher, investigators logged several personal effects. These included a gold watch, a lighter, and a wallet containing cash. A critical piece of evidence was the watch, as families of the 5 men later stated that none of the individuals owned such an item. Its origin remains unverified in the case file. Following the discovery of Weiher, the search radius was expanded. On June 6th, searchers canvassing the brush along the road leading to the trailer located further evidence. Approximately 11 miles from the abandoned vehicle and 4.5 miles downhill from the trailer, the search teams discovered Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling. The condition of what was recovered limited the findings, but medical examiners concluded the cause was likely exposure to the elements. There was no evidence on the scene suggesting a struggle or external injury. It appeared they had ceased walking and sat down to rest, never to rise again. 2 days later, on June 8th, the search team located Jack Hewitt. Authorities identified him through clothing and dental records found near the trailer site. The dispersal of the clothing suggested that local wildlife had disturbed the location. The proximity suggested that the group had largely stayed together during the ascent into the mountains before separating or succumbing to the elements one by one. The 5th man, Gary Mathias, remained absent from the physical record. However, procedural records highlight a specific item found inside the Forest Service trailer: a pair of tennis shoes. The family confirmed these shoes belonged to Mathias. This physical evidence implies that Mathias may have worn Weiher's larger leather shoes when he left the trailer. Investigators noted that Mathias required daily medication to manage his health, which had been left behind in the snowbound car. Without this medication, his physical condition would have deteriorated rapidly. Despite extensive canvassing of the surrounding forest, including aerial surveillance and ground teams grid searching the terrain, no further trace of Mathias was ever located. The synthesis of these records presents a clinical picture of a group of vulnerable individuals who, for reasons not captured in any known transcript or witness statement, drove away from safety and into a harsh, high-altitude environment. The final case files highlight a series of procedural contradictions. The car was in working order. The trailer offered heat and food that were ignored. The men walked nearly 20 miles uphill in deep snow, bypassing opportunities for shelter or return. The investigation officially concluded that the loss of life was accidental, driven by exposure. Yet the specific decision-making process that led 5 men to abandon a functional vehicle and walk into the wilderness remains absent from the evidence. The case of Gary Mathias remains open as a missing person file.